And today we will be talking about reporting functions in ZONE3. There's quite a huge variety of options you have in the software. So we're not obviously going to be able to discuss every possible scenario and every button and every click, but I do want to talk about the two major channels for outputting data. I want to talk about kind of things you can do to make your graphic or results report look nice and pretty, and how you can kind of build in a front end to basically gather some data from the user before the program starts to run. And the kind of reporting stuff I do want to talk about is the kind of two main channels for outputting data. Obviously, a metrology software is designed specifically to give you information, to acquire information with regards to how well you met the design specifications of a part. And if you are not getting that information, then it's an exercise in futility. So if we're not gathering information and then reporting it somewhere, might as well not be doing it for the most part. So we have a couple of different ways we can export data from the software. We have kind of a built-in canned report that can be modified to look and feel a little bit different. A lot more, again, for legacy users of Measure Mine, Measure X, we have a ton more functionality with regards to that. There's some really nice wizards in here to build headers, footers, change the kind of look and feel of the report itself. And then we also have the file output option, which is a configurable text file or text output that we can build templates to change the look and feel of the output. But it's also how we would get data into, QC Calc or something like that. I want to talk about some of the in-program reporting options as well. So there's an option called Show Form, where we can pop up a pre-made header right in the middle of the program in order to gather some information, that kind of thing. We'll look at an example of a customized report step, some graphical reporting, and anything else I come up with along the way. So without further ado, I did write a quick little program on this part. I've got some data built into the system already. So we can look at that data, that pre-measured data, but we have, a basic plain line alignment, calling out datums A, B, and C. And then we have in there a nice 2D contour measurement using the optics. So a 2D curve that we'll use a profile of a line analysis on. And then I have a laser scan on a cylinder where I took a bunch of scans on the cylinder, and we'll use a profile of a surface measurement on that to see kind of how we can report out that data and graphically and see what we have for options to look at the deviations there. And then we also have just a diameter measurement. So we'll look at kind of a circularity and what we're able to report with that. So the data I have acquired is on the part, looks kind of like this. It's hard to see all the points, but you can see I've got points along this edge. That makes up that 2D curve right there, as well as the C datum, which runs along this left edge. This front edge here is the B datum, and then this top plane, I did some laser focus points. That's our A datum, our primary datum. I did measure this hole using weak edge points, and then I did a laser scan right here to measure that cylinder, and then this is all measured with Feature Finder, this 2D curve feature. So first and foremost, when we talk about reporting in here, the main pathway out is through this results browser here, this results report template reporting method here. So it kind of looks like this. I've got a header up at the top here. And this is the header that pops up when I say run the routine. So if I close this real quick and rewind my routine, set my program marker at the beginning of the routine by rewinding it, I hit run, it pops up this header. This is the report header. Now this is totally and completely configurable. You'll notice a couple things in here. This part will be incorporated into my report. This part right down here is reserved for part setup instructions. So depending upon how I want to align to my report, align to my part, if I'm using the part setup alignment method that I covered in the alignment webinar, then I could put some instructions in here to tell somebody, hey, you need to go and find this feature, 0, X, Y, and Z in the DRO, move over to this feature, and then skew your X-axis alignment with that little theta button up in the DRO. Or, you know, you can also put pictures in here. But this part up here, which is going to show up in our results report, is totally configurable. So I could have my logo, customer logo, all of this stuff can be totally configured, drop downs, radio buttons, you name it. So that's what we see in the results browser. Then for everything that I output, I get some sort of an output here. So for a profile of a line measurement, I have some extra information, a circularity measurement, I get the swarm plot. But we can make this look and feel a little bit different. If I want more of an abbreviated look, I don't have to see as much of the graphical stuff here. As I scroll down through these different options here, you can see it kind of starts to get a little bit flatter in its look and feel, which is fine, sort of whatever you want. And then there's a configurable footer at the bottom too. So it all depends upon what you want. But that's kind of how we can use this graphical report. Now, the other option, if I go into any step here, so let's say the flatness of my plane measurement here. God, you got my, no worries. So if I look at any step here, this plane measurement, I have the report node in every step, every measured step or constructed step. There'll be a report node. If I right click and say don't skip, anytime you see the parentheses and it's grayed out, that just means it's skipping that. So by default, it skips the reporting node for each step, just assuming that you don't want to report on everything. So you kind of have to intentionally go and tell it, I want to report on this. So I'm going to say don't skip, and then I can double click on that to bring up the editor here. I have now this big database here, or this big kind of grid of all of the information that defines this plane here that's associated with it. So it's a bit more, and when we talk about how ZONE3 is a full-featured 3D software, that's kind of what we're talking about. Is it's going to give you a lot of information because it's actually truly correctly defining these geometries, which just means it needs to know a lot of things about them. But if we just look at, like, for example, the form of this plane, which would be the flatness in this case, here I can give it a tolerance, say we want it to be flat within 5 microns based off the measured points we have. And then right down here, I have these 2 columns, the results column. This is where I can output the this particular dimension to this results browser here. So if I set this to always, it will always report this, okay? And you can see I have that option for every single component of this plane measurement. I can set it to never, which is kind of the default, and I can set it to only if out of tolerance, or I can set it if it exceeds some percentage of tolerance. So if I just type in a number there, I can make it 25%. I could make it only report if it's 220%, or not 220, sorry, anywhere between 0 and 100. This is 201%. So that is your options there, okay? Just figure out what you want to send to that results browser, and that will go to the results browser. The other option here is this file output location, and this deals with a configurable text output. So if I send it there, if I say yes there, we'll kind of show you what you get as results. So I've said always for the results browser and always for the file browser. And now let's see what this looks like. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Now in my results, I get the form of this. It should be, oh, right here. Our plane form. It says I put in a tolerance of 5 microns. It is a 11, almost 12 micron actual, so it's failing and tells me what I've exceeded by, all that good stuff. Now let's look into where our file output is going. So if I go to the routine level, okay, I can find this icon right here called File Output Overrides, and it tells me what I'm using for a template and where that output is going. So I can go and look in the C part RTN QC.sta file, and I should be, when I find that file, I should see a single line of data in there for output. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go and navigate towards that location, C part RTN, and here's that QC.sta, that file that's been set up here. And so it's got some legacy stuff in there, but it shows me that I have my new project here, plane 1, gives me the name of this step here, what kind of a measurement it is, and what nominal, what the tolerance is, all that good stuff, and then the actual here. So the reason this is set up the way it is because this is the output configuration for QC Calc. But let's take a closer look at the file output template so we can understand exactly what's happening there. So if you go into your C users, public documents, the place where all of our QVI stuff is held for Zone 3 for QVM3. And in there, there's this templates file folder. And this is all the preloaded templates for file output. If you're using QC Calc, there's a QC Calc output template. If there's a Smart Report file output template, all these different kinds. And there, you know, if you need specific stuff, you can, or specific output templates, you can usually get some help on the forum, which all of you should be using or should be members of the forum. But in this case, let's look at the default file output template. So if I open that, it shows me, if I use this default file output template, how it's going to output data that is set to output in a given reporting step. So anything that's set to always here under the file output step, if I'm using this template, will output this way. So it shows me a couple of backslashes. These are just notes here. And then anything in the curly brackets are these these guys right here. They're pulling information from the software. So anything that's set up, anything that's just printed here, it's going to print that routine name. And then in the curly brackets, it's coded routine name. So it's going to grab the routine name from the actual project you're running. So project, routine name, you know, that kind of thing. And then for each step, we're going to get the following down here. So it's going to show this stuff, data, and then these TTT, BBB, all this stuff. This is just telling the machine what to print in this location. So whether that be actual, upper, lower, deviation, nominal, all that good stuff. This can all be modified, though, to look and feel however you want. You can delete things. You can actually, move things around. You can just code this the way that you want it. If you have questions about specific things, about how to set up a template a specific way, by all means, reach out to people on the forum, reach out to us. We can help you with that. But this is if you're trying to get the text out in a certain format, or to get the data out in a certain formatted text look and feel, this is the way you'd go about doing that. Okay. So the couple of things that we need to have loaded is we need to have our template that we're using. In our case, I'm using the QC Calc output template, and then a location for that text data to go, or that file output data to go. So this would be the location for that. The reason that it's using these, it says inherited from the system level. We can set up this file output template and location at a bunch of different levels. So at the system level, if I double click up here, I can set it up to be the default for all projects. So that's what I've done here, because we use QC Calc quite a bit around here. But certainly you might be using some other template and some other file location you can set up as the default. That can always be overridden at the project and routine level. So just be aware of, the different places where this is being addressed, and then make sure that you're setting this up to use the template that you want, and then to use the output location that you want. Do some testing. You can always just build some dummy data in there, and put your template in there and test it out. If it's not what you want, then adjust it. Okay. So that's kind of the file output capability of the software here. Whereas with the results browser, we have a little bit more going on. We have the ability to configure to change the look and feel of all this. So let's talk first about the header that we have here. The header that we're using is set up in our routine report overrides here. So it says I'm using the system report header 1. This is kind of a default one. I'm going to go down and change this to a different one. So I'm going to say I'm going to use my show form test. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and build one because I don't want to make sure I don't have any customer stuff in here. So we're going to build one from scratch. And the way we do that is we go up to our reporting tree. This is one you may or may not have messed with very much, but the reporting tree is right up here. And when I click on that, it gives me a whole tree that I can double click and get rid of as well. If you just want to move it around, you can move it around as well. And in here, we have the different reporting defaults or templates that we can use. So you have your single run report template. This would be, you know, what we're seeing in the actual lines here per output dimension. There's a multi-run report. So if I'm running multiple parts using a part repeat, I get some additional information. So some statistical analysis information, process control information, you know, CP, CPK, that kind of thing, range. So play around with that. Right there, we can actually see down here what it's going to report. But you get min, average, max, range, standard deviation, part to tolerance ratio, CP, CPK. So it's just some built-in statistical process control information for you. And then the report headers, these deal with the actual header that we were just discussing. And I'm going to go ahead and build one. So if I want to change any of this or make any of this customized, I'm just going to right-click and say Create. There's also an import option in there if you were doing this offline. If you had built some headers offline or anything else, you could import that from your offline seat or a file location. So once I say that I am going to build a report header, you can see right down here, I'm in the editor, and I get this little work pane to work with down here, but it's kind of clumsy. So like any of these bars, I can detach it by double-clicking right up here. So now I've got this nice kind of work pane to work from, okay? I can make this bigger or smaller too. So let's make it nice and wide. And some of the options along the left-hand side here, this is to build out something that would be customized for your reports. You can use these, you could have one for every customer. You could have one that's sort of dynamic. But basically what you have here is the options on the left-hand side to customize this. You can build it off of a already built one, so you can kind of take some of the stuff from here. So for example, if I wanted to use the ZONE3 logo, maybe I would want to put my logo, and I can always highlight all this stuff and say, I don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and grab what's called picture box here and throw that into my screen here. And you'll see when I start to drag and make things bigger and smaller, it kind of does a little bit of auto formatting for you. So you can see it's showing me, you know, my distances to the margins, whether I'm in line or the same size as everything is this image over here. And here I can actually navigate. So it says choose image, and I'll just navigate to, hopefully I have an image on here of us. Let me do this. We'll grab an image from the internet, our logo. And let's see, we'll just go to the images here and we'll save that logo wherever. I'm going to put it in my folder called Training Junk because this will get saved there. Okay, so let's see if I can use that. I'm going to choose an image. I'm going to look in my Training Junk folder. And I should have a nice image in there of, oh, that was an incorrect file type. Give me 1 second. Thought I had access to all of our drives. There we go. This works. Okay, that should work. JPEGs are good. So I'm going to use this logo right here. So now the logo is there. Now I've got my logo, the ZONE3 logo. Great, looks good. Make them bigger, smaller, whatever you want to do. Then I'm going to throw a label box in here. I'm going to do a label box that just says, I'm going to call this one operator, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and type that word in up here under where it says text. I'm also going to change the justification. I just want it to be center justified there so I can kind of do that with a couple of these. Maybe, you know what, I'll make it right justified. Right center justified, so everything sort of matches up. In this one, I'm going to call, let's say, serial number. And we'll do the same justification on that one, center right. And then we'll do one more label box. We'll call this one run type. So we'll call this one FAI. So if it's a first article inspection, we'll assume that there's some additional stuff that needs to be measured, and that would then influence how much of this gets run. So now we have some options here for how to bring data in here. So my first label here says operator. I'm going to use what's called a combo box to gather that information. So when we hit run, this is going to pop up, and I'm going to force the operator to choose a name from this combo box. And I'm going to say that the names are Chris, John, Mike, and Brenda. Okay? So those will be the options in this pull down for them to choose. I'm also going to say that whatever the data that gets put in here via that combo box, I'm going to make it a variable that I can then use in my software or in this particular routine. So I'm going to call this a pound sign. You know what? Let's make it a string because it's going to be text-based, and I'll call it operator. And I just want to show you how you can bring variables in. We're not going to get too involved in that. And I'm also going to make this one a checkbox, and I'm going to say check for yes. And I'm going to make this one a Boolean. Call that question mark FAI. So that'll be a kind of a true false. And then I'm going to have a serial number, so I'll just put a text box in next to that one. And this one I'll just call pound sign serial number or serial. And so that'll be a numeric kind of variable. So we've got a couple of different variables in there. And then just some of the other things you can do in here, you can have a radio button, which is kind of similar to the checkbox. A dynamic picture box would be kind of pointing at a file location that can be updated. We could have a model picture box. If I throw that in there, it's going to allow me to kind of grab the image of the model. So maybe I'll do that. We'll click and capture the model view. And now, you know, I've got this nice little, and if I change the model view over here, by the way, folks, it is going to allow me to kind of address that back in this model view. So now if I re-updated that and said capture the model view, it'll capture that new model view there. Numeric control is just going to be kind of a counter. I have the pointer in a group box. Should allow me to kind of group some things up. And the project name, these are some just kind of automatic things. So if I throw this out, it's going to have the project name, routine name, and I could put time and date there as well. Whatever you want to do. You kind of get the idea here. So now I'm going to save this as, and if I want to move a whole bunch of things real quick. Oops. I can do that, and now they're nice. This is kind of ugly, but it is what it is. So I'm going to now give this a name, and we'll call this training test. Make sure everything works, and I'm going to hit save. And now I have this saved in my list here, a training test. I can now use this. So in order to use this as my new header, I'm going to go into my routine here, double click to edit, and I'm going to go to my reporting overrides, and I'm going to change that header to root or training test, and I'm going to hit save. Okay. Now, when I hit run, oops, got to rewind my program. When I hit run, this is what pops up now. And the really nice part about this is this will be my header. Okay, so I'm going to say this is Chris running this. The serial number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to check yes for that. This is an FAI, a first article inspection. Now I'm going to hit run routine, and then I could use these variables for whatever purposes I have in my program. So, for example, that FAI, Boolean checkbox, because I've made that a Boolean, it's a true false. I could qualify that in an if-else statement. And say if this is checked, then I could direct the program or the routine to run more or less steps. So it's a way to make things kind of dynamic, right? So you can kind of direct the flow of your program using these different variables. The variables can also be brought into different SGC softwares as trace fields if you want to be able to filter data based on serial number, operator, that kind of thing. That can be helpful as well. But the other thing that it does is it's going to capture that data in the header. So even if I'm not using some sort of outside software, when I look at my report, I'm going to see who the operator was. I'm going to see what the serial number was. It's something that really is a big improvement on the previous softwares because you sort of just got what you got out of those. There was no way to really change the look and feel of the report. It was, you could add a label for a dimension, that kind of thing, but you couldn't really change how the header looked. You couldn't change how the footer looked that much. Whereas here, they've really addressed that because, these softwares are about conveying information. That's what metrology software really does. And the better it can do that, the better it can convey that information, the more likely it's going to offer value to you as a user. And so we'll see kind of what this header looks like when it pops up here at the end. The next thing I want to discuss is some of the different graphical reporting things. I had mentioned earlier that, information, the ability to convey information is really the most important part of this software in my eyes, just because if it's great at gathering information but is unable to convey that information, it hasn't really offered us that much value. But when we can actually tell somebody how to improve a process or change a process or reject or accept incoming or outgoing parts, then we've sort of done our job. So within the results tab here now, we're using this different header. We have that information in there. This is going to be part of our report. There is some built in for certain types of steps, kind of graphical data. So for example, for a profile of a line measurement, we can kind of show this information using this little slider here. And it's going to show me my worst deviation into and out of the part here. Okay, based on the datum reference frame I'm using, and it shows me it's failing. We'll kind of take a look at how this can be helpful. I also have a circularity measurement in here, and I can bring that one up, and it's going to show me a form diameter here. So I'm also going to see my worst and deviation into and out of the material here. But just some more information to help you kind of understand what your parts are doing, and also great, educational tools for your operators and that kind of thing, to explain to them what some of this stuff means. I think, if you tell me about it, I kind of understand it, but if you show it to me, then I can get a better hold of it, a better grasp of it. And that's what a lot of this graphical stuff does for you. But you can see here, for example, with this profile of a line graphic here, I might want a little bit better look at this. It might be a little more helpful if I can kind of flesh this out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my reporting ribbon here, and I'm going to create what's called a graphic step. And the graphic step allows me to say, I want to look at one of my GD&T type measurements using more of a graphical kind of view. You can apply this to really any step, but you're going to be limited as to what the report types are. But here, we can look at the deviations for this step. We can say, I want to see that it's a datum. I want to see that it's just the report property. This can then be saved into my report in any view that I want. It gets particularly helpful though with these kind of profile measurements. So I'm going to do this 2D curve. Oops, sorry, I'm going to do the profile of a line, not the 2D curve. And that is, I get rid of it over here. And so you can see right here, this is the report properties down here. In the report type, it says showing that means I'm showing my report properties. I can change that to deviations, and now I'm going to be actually looking at the deviations of every individual point based on the feature control frame I've created. Or I could have both if I was so inclined. I'm going to create a view that's helpful here. So I'm going to look at the top view, and I'm only going to really look at this feature that's considered. But I can add another, I can click on that profile again, and now I've got both the report properties and the deviations there. And if I'm looking at the deviations, I can exaggerate these now to get a better sense of what's happening, okay? These are all the individual points right here. So if I zoom in real close, you'll see the normal deviation, or the deviation normal to the actual feature at that location, and it starts to give me a little more information about what's going on here. Okay, so looks like I've got a couple of issues. So right here, it looks like there's a bulge in the material, and let's see if that is something that's true. I'm going to click on my move to location mode, and remember, only use this if you're aligned to your part, but I'm going to click on that, and now I can see, okay, there is some junk going on here. There's some you know, obviously this part's maybe been dropped, but right here, there's a point deviation in the material, and it's very likely that it's that little dot right there. So maybe I didn't tune my tools very well, but I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to send this to my report. But before I do that, I'm going to set my report size, or the size of this image, to what I want here. So I'm going to say 80% of the width of the report, just so it's nice and big, it's easy to see. Before I do that too, I just want to show you a couple of your different options for how these whiskers can look. So if I double click here, I can treat them as cylinders instead of whiskers. Okay. And now they're actually little individual cylinders. It's kind of a similar view, but you know, you can see the points a little bit easier. Or I can treat them as dots. Now the dots probably in this case not the best way to go, because they're really hard to see. You know, these are all individual dots. I can make the diameter of them smaller or larger, and you'll see them shrink here. I'll show you when I would use dots in just a minute. You can also change what the coloration actually is. So in this case, it's a range. You know, the hotter colors are going to be excess material, and the cooler colors are going to be minus material. I can change it to tolerances, things that are in and out of tolerance, and then the status of them. So this one actually is out of tolerance. The ones that are positive material here, green, because they're in tolerance. But whatever I want, I'm just going to go ahead and hit this range. This will now save when I hit OK and save into my results browser, or into my little results report. So if I click on that, this is now in that results. And it looks like this because that's how I had this image oriented. So however you change that, that can be locked, by the way. So when it gets to this step in a routine, that it will automatically orient this a certain way. Just make sure you click on the lock view here. Now, I just wanted to investigate this particular point. So this is something that's also helpful. This flyer point that's in my little profile of a line measurement here and here, I don't know that that's accurate. That's probably a flyer point. So let's go back and investigate that 2D curve measurement. Okay. I can now go look at my feature finder and say, I want to look at this particular right here. That was the culprit. I'm clicking on the actual finders in the graphics window here. And I'm just going to drive to that one and say, remeasure. And you see, lo and behold, it is indeed capturing that little piece of reflection there. I'll move it out of the way so you can see it. But it's that little dot right there is enough. So we need to be very good and adept at tuning our tools. And the way I might get around that is I might just change the strength of edge to be a little bit higher here. And now it avoids that. If I then wanted to apply that to all the properties, or to all the finders here, I would say apply properties to all, and then move this back to the beginning, the program marker of that, and rerun it. And I'm going to have probably a passing measurement now because I'm going to have less of those flyers in there. But again, with the graphics, you're able to not only get a number, because the profile measurement is it's a deviation, it's a worst case scenario or a worst point type of measurement, but it's a nice graphically to be able to look and see where is it. If this is for manufacturing feedback, I'm sure your machinists are going to be very happy to actually see, oh, I've got excess material here, or I've got this bulge here, okay? That kind of thing. So now I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's rerun this profile step here, just that. And now it looks like it's passing. Happy days, okay? That was the problem, was those 2 deviations and those couple of bad points there, and now we get a passing measurement. And it was quite significant too. You can see right there, I was at like 430 microns of deviation, and now I'm at 60 is the worst case scenario, minus 30 times 2. Okay, so the other ways the graphical reporting could be kind of handy is, again, for this profile of a cylinder measurement. Now I've got all these points here, and it's quite a few. If I look closely, those are all laser scans that I took on the cylinder, and then I did a profile of a surface measurement. Now, if I go back to my results, even if I'm outputting this profile of a surface, which I am, I'm not going to see in there one of these little whisker plots, because it'd be really difficult to show the deviations if they're not 2-dimensional. So we can do it for a circularity, like a form plot. They do it for flatness because, again, it's a little bit, doable. But when a surface gets to be dynamic, like a cylinder or a cone, it becomes too difficult to convey those deviations graphically in a 2D kind of flat setting here. So what we do instead is I'm going to say I want to do a graphic report of that profile of a surface measurement. And now I can do the same thing and change this to deviation. And look, I see these individual deviations right here. If I leave these surfaces opaque, then I can't see the ones that are behind that surface. But now you can kind of see what some of your options are there. But again, this maybe isn't the best way to look at this. So the way I like to do surfaces like this is just change it by double-clicking over here to my dots. This is where the dots become very helpful, because now I'm getting kind of a heat map where it looks like I'm a little bit proud down the middle. I'm a little bit shy on the edges here. And it kind of tells me a little bit more about what's going on with this cylinder, okay? So then you can, again, orient that however you like. Maybe that's my best view, maybe something like that. I can say how much of the report I'd like to take up. Maybe I'll just stick with my 80%, and then I could lock that and say save. And if I go back into regenerating my results so that it resends the data to my report, I'm going to see what that looks like now in my report. So I should have a couple of different things in here. I get the whiskers that look like that. That's for that profile of a line measurement. And then I have the dots here, that kind of heat map look. So both valuable, both kind of nice, but just a great way to actually convey some extra information. Also under our reporting step here, or reporting ribbon, is the custom report. A custom report will be building a step in to the middle of your routine that maybe addresses a single feature, however you want to do it. I'll just show you kind of an example. If I wanted to drill down on, say, a diameter, right? So I'm going to make this bigger. It functions very similar to our header configurator, if you will. But I can do a couple of things here. So I'm going to say I want to put in the report properties of, say, this circle. And now I add that, and it says, okay, it's circle 1, whatever. I can change the design here. So I can say I want it to look like that. Hit OK, and now I get this nice long, this nice long bar here, and happy days. Maybe a little too big. Let's see if I can shrink it down this way a little bit. Okay, so I've got that in there. I'm going to also add a picture box. Now, this would be like, let's say, for example, in my routine, I'm taking a picture of this diameter because it's a questionable diameter. And we're looking for, you know, maybe some off register when we interpolate that hole, or there's a burr there or something. So we're trying to see if there's some form issues. So again, I could set the software up, ZONE3, to take a picture of this hole, and then I could make this a dynamic picture box to look at that image. So as that image should update, it's going to actually be placing the image of that hole from this run in there. So that, I guess, would be a dynamic picture box, but we'll just leave this to prove the point. We'll just leave this, leave it at this. So there's my image of the hole in question. I'm going to add a form plot. This is also something that's quite nice to be able to do. And we'll make this nice and big. And I'll put that right here. And I'll say I want the form plot for this circularity measurement. Okay, and then, you know, whatever else you want, you could put some notes in there, a label, what is this doing, type some stuff in there. Okay, this, maybe some instructions for whoever's going to read this post. Take a look at this hole and monitor for burrs. Okay. So we've got this nice little customized report. I can hit save. And now this will also be a step in my routine. So there's a graphic report in there now. If I hit save, or I'm sorry, a custom report, I'm going to regenerate the results once again. And you'll see a little additional kind of report in there. So I get all my dimensions I've output here, looking and feeling how I want based on the template I'm using. And I get the custom header in here. And now I get the couple of graphical reports in this custom report for this hole. Okay. Again, just some additional options for how you can convey some of the information. The show form button in here is something that I can basically make it so that I have a header pop up anywhere I want in the routine. And the way this works is, if you think about in the past, in MeasureMind, MeasureX, for those of you who are familiar, or really any other software, if I wanted to come to a point in a routine where I wanted it to ask the operator for something, okay, so you know, a variable, who is the operator? This thing, you know, what is the serial number of this part? You saw that I did it in the header here, so I was gathering that information in the header. I could also not want to have that information in the header. You know, maybe it's a whole bunch of variables I need to collect, and I don't need them to be in the header. I can build a header using that same header configurator that has no intention of being a header ever used, but rather a form that I'm going to show in the middle of my program. Okay. And so if I chose to add this header, I'm just going to use the training test header again, just for the purpose of this. And I'm going to make this pop up somewhere randomly in the middle of my routine. Okay. So I'm going to have it right after I create my alignment. I'm going to have my header pop up again. And we'll just pretend that this is a different kind of form that I'm using to gather some additional data. So, you know, a lot of times if you're going to get very, I guess, into the variable logic programming, where you want to have your program very dynamic, able to jump around, do all sorts of things, maybe gather data from outside sources and bring it in to set variables, all that kind of stuff, it's sometimes a little bit nicer to be able to just pop up this form in the middle of the routine and gather a whole bunch of variables from the operator. And so it would look like this. After this one's done running, you're going to see that form pop up, and it just shows you that you could essentially create a header that's with the purpose of having it pop up in the middle of the routine, and then have it show in the middle of the routine again in order to gather variables or whatever else you want to do with it. So there it is, it pops up, I hit OK, and then I could either use that for any number of reasons. Okay. And then just a couple more things here before I finish up. There's this file output step, and this allows me to build a step anywhere into the routine that would let me use a different file output template and a different file output location for any number of reasons. Maybe you have 15 dimensions that you just want to report, you know, the actual of and send it to a different location. Well, here you go. Just create a template for it and set up the output location. Say which coordinate system you want to report these dimensions in, which is nice because you can then, you know, if you're switching your coordinate system around throughout your program for whatever reason, and there might be a lot of reasons that you would want to maybe dial in on a feature, move your origin there so that you can kind of keep things dynamic. After everything's said and done, you could re-report those steps using this method and set up the current coordinate system, and then everything's going to be reported out in that coordinate system. Basically, it would work like this: set up a template, an output location, and then click on the steps that you want to include in this. So anything set up in the steps I'm checking here that is set to file output always would then report using this current method or using the method here, and this would become a step in the routine then. And then the report method here is just kind of another way to re-report a step, maybe in a different alignment again, without having to remeasure it, reconstruct it, that kind of thing. So it'll just re-report that step in maybe a new alignment. Okay. Once we get our results set up the way we want here, we have a couple of options with what to do with these. These can be printed, and we can see what the print preview is going to look like in this case. Okay, so I'd have to rerun it to get all my information, but looks something like that. And then we also have the ability to print a file. Okay, so if I print this to a file, I just need to say if I'm going to use a template, like a file output template, or if I'm just going to send this to a location. Okay, so if I don't check this, we're not going to use that template. And then I would say where I want this to go. I could append the date and time to keep it unique each time, requiring an e-signature, something we'll cover somewhere else. And then I can show up in here only the things that are out of tolerance, only my tolerance features. So if I wanted to kind of filter the data down a little bit, that's what I would get there. I'm just going to load the last run data here. Don't have any. Okay. I have to rerun this, then we'll look at that. This software can export directly to Excel via this results browser. It kind of goes in a format that it tries to mimic that results browser's look and feel. So, you know, it'll be kind of a bunch of stacked cells and that kind of thing. The features or the data will go to the same cell each time, so you can kind of pull it out that way. Which is something you just couldn't do in the previous software, so it's worth mentioning. But you can always use, you know, a formatted file output template to have that data formatted in a way that would be easy to bring into Excel. Additionally, there is a lot of outside softwares I know that these guys are currently employing as far as SPC reporting. There's third-party applications. There's a lot of different ways to report out of here. I think that is about as far as we're going to go today with it. So I hope that everybody was able to get something out of this. If you have specific questions about how to, create reports, how to do things specifically with regards to reporting, please, by all means, reach out to us, reach out to me specifically, and don't hesitate to get on the forum. There's a lot of people who are providing really good information on the forum, a lot of users who take pride in this, and I've seen some great templates be put up there as far as the file output templates are concerned. So if you're sending data to Smart Profile, you need the points, you name it. There's lots of great stuff on that website. If you do have additional questions that you'd like answered, I'm going to stop the recording now and we can take those questions offline.